Hello again, little masters, and welcome to the Prancing Pony podcast.
West Du Hall, my friends. I'm Shawn Marchese, real-life Lord of the Mark, and as always, I'm here with the man of the West, the Aragorn to my Éomer, Alan Sisto.
Well, thanks, Shawn. Today we'll be looking at Chapter 7 of the Quinta Silmarillion, of the Silmarils and the Unrest of the Noldor, here on Of the Prancing Pony and the podcast.
It took us 2 prologues and, 7 chapters?
Yeah.
But we're finally getting to the Silmarils, and I'm very happy
that's why they call
that.
it the Silmarillion.
Yeah, didn't you know? There's a lion in it later, so Silmaril.
Oh, cool.
Lion.
Is his name Aslan?
Wrong inkling.
Oh, yes.
Oh. Well, if it's your first time reading, you might notice that the Silmarils are a little similar to the Rings of Power in some ways. They're both artifacts of incredible beauty, masterpieces of craftsmanship, but they don't exactly bring good luck to the people who have them, do they?
No, they don't. And I'm not sure that you could fit one of these in your pocket like you could a ring, but I don't know, maybe.
Probably not. How big are they? We never know how big they are.
Because we don't know how big the crown is. Spoiler,
Right,
though. I don't want to go there because that'll be a spoiler if we get to that.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, we do have a couple of housekeeping. Let me try that again. We do have a couple of housekeeping items. First of all, we have lots of new reviews on iTunes. We really want to express our gratitude. My goodness, they're just so kind, so just over the top, sweet and generous in terms of what you've said about us. We're super grateful for it. Your check is in the mail.
You're not supposed to say it on the show, Alan.
We really do thank you, and I wish there was a more tangible way we could thank you, but that's about all we can do for you for now is really give you our appreciation. But we do thank you, and for those of you who haven't done that, please do that, and it'll make you feel so good.
Yep.
Because we'll thank you too.
And if you've already left a review, hey, don't stop there. Continue to let us know how we're doing. We love to hear feedback.
We really do. Yeah.
Drop us a line at the mailbox or on social media. But again, if you haven't left a review, please do. And thank you so much to those of you who already have done so.
We really do appreciate it. I mean, all teasing, all joking aside, it's very kind, and we're very grateful. We want to get
it's honoring and humbling.
It really is.
I would say
it's been quite a road. I'm so pleased that this has gone well, and Shawn and I were just talking even before this episode about just how much it's grown and how much we've come a long way, and we know our listeners have come a long way, and we're just thankful for each of you. So thanks so much. Another housekeeping thing we want to do. Sorry, folks. Is we want to play a few clips of some pronunciation issues we've had some questions about. The biggest word we've had questions on is Teleri. We've been saying, most people, and including us, prior to confirming this with the audio recording, we used to pronounce it Teleri, because we do know that E is supposed to be pronounced like an A.
More like air, yeah.
Air, more like air, Teleri.
Right.
And so it's natural, at least for those of us speaking American English, to take that and make it also the stressed syllable, Teleri.
Right.
But we listened to Christopher Tolkien reading it in some excerpts from the Silmarillion that are available on the J.R.R. Tolkien Audio Collection audiobook, which I highly recommend. Nothing like listening to J.R.R. Tolkien himself reading sections from The Hobbit, sections from The Fellowship. My goodness, it's a beautiful thing.
It is really some amazing stuff.
Of course, we don't get him reading from the Silmarillion, but we do get Christopher Tolkien reading from the Silmarillion. And I've got a few clips here so that we'll be able to hear how Teleri is properly pronounced, and we'll discuss it briefly. First, here's one.
Only the Teleri beyond the mountains still sang upon the shores of the sea.
So it is Teleri. That is the first.
Teleri.
First syllable is the stressed one, the T-E-L. But it is also A.
Christopher Tolkien manages to get that air in there, even though it's not the stressed syllable. And I can't think of a way as an American to do that without faking a British accent.
It is pretty hard, isn't it? Teleri.
Teleri. But we'll try. Teleri.
I guess if you trill the R, it makes it a little
trill
easier.
the R a little bit to make it work. Yeah.
Teleri.
But that's what we're shooting for, is Teleri.
Yeah. We will probably slip into our lazy American English and say Teleri now and then.
I'm sure.
Because we're focused more on the correct stress rather than the correct second syllable vowel sound. But That is the way it is. It's teleri. So,
Yep.
and then
That's a good one.
another word we've had some questions about is taniquetil. So here we go.
When all the peoples of Valinor poured forth their joy in music and song upon Taniquetil.
Taniquetil.
Aniquitil.
So it's like there is a secondary emphasis on that last syllable. Though the first one is the louder, the first one is the primary emphasis.
The ni.
Taniquetil. Yeah, I'm sorry, the
Right.
second syllable, but the first, yeah. Taniquetil.
Third to last syllable.
Right.
Yeah.
What do we call that? Not the penultimate.
The antepenult.
The antepenultimate.
That's some word nerd for you right
Boy,
there.
isn't it?
There is a pronunciation guide in the back of Return of the King, which is somewhat helpful for this, but
Doesn't answer all the questions.
it doesn't answer all the questions, and I think it's easy to overthink the empty spaces that it doesn't answer.
Exactly.
And
I know we
but I think-
sometimes preferred the Aztec pronunciation, Taniquetl,
Taniquetil, right?
which is
I think
not correct.
that's probably slipped in a couple of times too in this
Probably.
podcast. Probably let it come out.
Taniquetil.
But I love the sound of Taniquetil. That's beautiful.
I just love the sound of
actually
Christopher
love,
Tolkien reading.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love his Valinor. That is
Oh, isn't that great?
cool. I love that.
Valinor. There,
Yeah.
it really is a second emphasis, a substress
syllable
on the
again.
last
Yep.
syllable on Valinor, and in so doing, he really gets the e out of that li.
That's true.
That second syllable with that I should be an e sound rather than an I sound. Certainly
Well,
not an sound like we do. It's just
Right.
Valinor.
Valinor, yeah. Well, and he also gets across the idea that these are two separate roots. Vali, Nor, which is
Valinor.
literally the realm of the Valar.
That's true.
Nor
Nor,
meaning
yeah.
realm. The way he stresses it, you really get the idea that it's a compound word, which
yeah.
it's a brilliant.
He's pretty
brilliant
phenomenal
stuff.
that way. Well, we've got this next reading actually uses both of the words, so let's take a listen to this one.
But they found no trace or rumour of him beyond the shores of the Teleri, far south of great Taniquetil.
Okay. That's helpful.
There you go.
Yeah. And then the last word, we've been talking about the mountain upon which Tyrion is built. And we've been mockingly calling it, tuna on rye and things like that. And of course, we do know that the stress is on the first syllable. But I'm pleased to say that he does manage to find a way to pronounce it differently than we would pronounce the fish. So let's take a listen to what he says, and then we can discuss.
He calls it Ahi. Tyrion upon Ahi. I'm sorry. That'll be the last time I make a joke like that.
Oh, it's a poke bowl. Okay, we're good.
Proceed, please.
Seared ahi. Okay, here we go. All right.
Not once did they turn their eyes back to Tyrion on the green hill of Tuna.
Aha. So certainly the emphasis is correct on that first syllable, but it's not tuna like we pronounce the fish. It's tuna.
Tuna, yeah.
Tuna. Well,
So
yeah,
it's not.
it's tuna.
It's not that it's an issue of stress. It's an issue of really enunciating that A and pronouncing it
enunciate the A.
instead
Tuna.
of making it a sort of a schwa, I guess is what it would be. It's
right,
just
right.
that sort
It's
of
not the
yeah.
Yeah, it's tuna.
Tuna.
So we've got Tyrion, I should say, to enunciate correctly, upon Tuna. And we've got, just up the road a little bit, the Teleri, living in Alqualonde, to the north of Taniquetil. Okay.
Very good.
Just
Very
wanted
good.
to make sure we got
That's-
that all, because I know we've had some questions about our,
Yeah.
sadly, a little bit lazy pronunciation of Teleri. I would promise that that's going to go away, but it's not. Just because we do speak lazy English sometimes. That's what Americans do.
It's true. It's
It
true.
is.
But
It is.
but it's not for lack of trying. It's not for lack of love of the words. That's
no,
for sure.
no, that's true. And for those of you who've never heard that recording before, by the way, really, I do recommend, and as much as we love the audiobooks narrated by Martin Shaw or Rob Inglis or Christopher Lee, who does The Children of Húrin, the readings that are available on that J.R.R. Tolkien audio collection are just, it's so personal, because you get to hear the vast bulk of it, of course, is the professor himself. Christopher only reads portions from the Silmarillion, but it is spectacular. And he reads, I think,
that's-
all of chapters 8 and 9 and a
Okay.
slightly abbreviated version of Beren and Luthien. So we'll probably
And that's the
play
same
some
set that
bits next week.
has that's the same set that has the professor reading Namadie, right?
Yes, yes.
Oh, yeah.
It is.
That's beautiful.
It
That's
really
so
is
beautiful.
beautiful. Good stuff. But so the housekeeping stuff's out of the way. Shawn, does Barliman have anything in his mailbag for us?
He does have a couple of things for us tonight, Alan. I'm going to start with a correction that he has for us. Our friend Tanya in New York wrote in after listening to episode 12 because we mentioned something about Fingolfin's children being very close with Finarfin's children and not being friendly with Fëanor's children. I think we may have just sort of oversimplified the situation there, but Tanya made a point to remind us that actually we see Arethel, Fingolfin's daughter, was very close with the sons of Fëanor, and she's right. There's
two of them at least, yeah.
Definitely Celegorm and Cruderfin.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as I read her letter to us, I thought, oh, of course, there's also Fingon and Maedhros,
who were
very close friends, and that leads to what I think is one of everyone's favorite stories later in the Silmarillion.
Yeah, that really is.
So I think it was just a sort of brushing over it on our part.
Well, it might have been an assumption that we made, or even an inference that we made. I don't know. I mean, if Tanya says we said it, I believe her. But I do know that the text is specific about the fact that the sons of Finarfin, so that would not include Arethel because she's a daughter, but the text says that the sons of Finarfin are as close in friendship with the sons of Fingolfin as though they were all brothers. Now, it doesn't mention anything about the sons of Fëanor, so it may be that we inferred or even said that they're not close with those guys. But of course, just because they're close, just because that set of cousins are close, doesn't preclude them from also being close to one or more of Fëanor's sons. Just probably not as close as with Fingolfin's sons.
That's true. Yep. So a good point there, and thank you, Tanya, for clarifying that for us and keeping us on track. Much. Tanya is very good.
She's good at that, isn't she?
She's very good at. I mean, she knows these texts really, really well, and she's very good about helping us find things that we can't find sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So
we're grateful
thank you
for
as
it.
Always.
Grateful for it.
Thank you as always, Tanya. And we've got one more here in Barliman's bag. This one's actually been sitting in the bag for a little while. Our old friend,
blow some dust off of this one.
Yeah. Our old friend Joan in Reading, Pennsylvania. A few months ago, she wrote in with a question that she even acknowledged that we'd be holding on to for a little bit. Here, she knew that we were going to wait until this episode because it comes up in this episode.
It does.
So thanks for waiting, Joan, and I'll go ahead and read her question here. She says, "I've wondered about this for quite a while. Fëanor supposedly never accepted counsel from Melkor. Others of the Noldor did, and learned how to make weapons from him. They heard rumors of men, and thought that the Valar kept them away from Middle-earth so they could usurp their inheritance. Melkor used a divide-and-conquer strategy among the Noldor to make them question one another. Who in Valinor, a paradise, a land of peace, was teaching them to fight? Was it Melkor? Who were they training against? Could their skill just have come from hunting, or do you think Melkor was giving them battle training as well? And if Fëanor never heeded Melkor, do you think he observed what the other Noldor were doing, and that incited him to do the same, to make weapons, make armor, and start training for battle?" Fascinating question. And,
it really is.
And so she's referring to, we alluded to this in Chapter 6, that Melkor had claimed that Fëanor had learned some of his art from him, and in reality, or on the surface at least, that was not true, that Fëanor hated Melkor more than anybody and never took counsel from him directly. As Joan is hinting in her question, in this chapter, we're going to start to see some friction between the sons of Finwë, and it is going to escalate to the point of violence. I mean, just short of actual bloodshed.
Threatened violence, at least for now.
Threatened violence, definitely violence in the heart.
Yes.
So I wanted to bring up Joan's question here at the beginning. As we discuss this in the episode, we will jump back to it, and I think we'll see an answer emerge. So
I think you're right. Yeah, it's probably easier to answer that in the context of our discussion.
Yep, as opposed to skipping ahead. Since after all, this escalating violence or friction is sort of the theme of this chapter.
Pretty much.
Unrest of the Noldor.
Indeed. Well, so I guess that means we go straight into the discussion then.
I think so, yeah.
Excellent.
And do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, well, I'd first want to say that there's a massive spoiler alert, but it's the entire text. So I'm just going to, I don't know if anybody noticed this, but listen to all of these different spoilers. We get that Fëanor, it's possible that foreknowledge came to him of the doom that drew near. Well, there's kind of a pseudo spoiler.
Foreboding.
And then we get this really obvious one. But not until the end when Fëanor shall return who perished ere the sun was made. So, spoiler, Fëanor dies. Spoiler, the sun hasn't been made yet, but is going to be made.
Yeah.
I mean, really, just right there, boom.
Well, at least it tells you a couple of good things are going to happen in this book.
Well, and then we get another bad one. That the inner fire of the Silmarils he made of the blended light, which lives in them yet, though the trees have long withered and shine no more.
Oh man, that's right.
Boom.
Oh.
So just if you're reading, I would just tell you that the book itself is a massive spoiler. Just be aware.
It's really, yeah. Tolkien did put a few spoilers.
Well, like we've talked about,
throughout
it's not about the actual outline of the story. It's about how we get there.
It's true.
And at least that's certainly
and
Tolkien's perspective, yeah.
Yeah, and Tolkien was always pretty transparent about the fact that this book is about fall.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's falling. Something is falling.
Somebody's falling.
There's going to be a fall. There's going to be several falls, actually.
Yes, there will.
We've already seen a couple. So,
and it's also
right.
a history book.
It's how we get there.
And
that's true.
It being a history book, it's being read by people who are, around after the light of the trees.
After
the making of the sun, and certainly after the death of Fëanor. So
that's true. It really works as sort of what we might call an in-universe history book, an in-universe mythology.
Exactly. Well, I know you had some thoughts on Fëanor's motivation in making the Silmarils. Do you want to talk about that real quick?
I do, yeah, because he says that he pondered how the light of the trees, the glory of the blessed realm, might be preserved imperishable. And and since it does say that, he may have had some shadow of foreknowledge about what was going to happen.
Right.
This just raises a really interesting question to me, which, we've done a lot of beating up on Fëanor, and with good reason.
Yeah, we'll continue to do so, but.
Oh, absolutely. Because nearly all of his actions are fairly reprehensible or end up that way.
Certainly.
But I wonder if here we're seeing that his motivation in the beginning might have actually not been all that bad. I think he really was trying to do something good by preserving the light of the trees that he knew wasn't going to last. I kind of wrote down as I was writing this, is this a desire to possess the light of the trees, or is it really an attempt at a sub-creative act?
Yeah.
That's
an interesting. Because it doesn't appear. You're right. As often as we bash Fëanor, and most often rightly so, this doesn't appear to be something that is done out of a greed or out of a lust for anything or out of pride. It
certainly
seems
not at the start.
Not at the start. I mean, pretty quickly, yes.
Very quickly it becomes that.
But it is interesting. The first thing that came to my mind was, is it even possible in Ardamard to preserve anything imperishable?
Well, and I don't think it is. And I think that's the fundamental flaw in Fëanor's logic. That this is his desire. I mean,
it wasn't a bad motivation. It was just a mistaken motivation.
Just foolish, And we talked about, Aule and how, foolish acts can have okay motivations, but that doesn't stop them from being foolish acts. And then it's what do you do about it?
And it doesn't stop them from having bad consequences either.
Exactly. But I thought back to something we talked about in the Gift to Men episode, where we talked about the temptation that Tolkien speaks of in one of his letters, about the temptation for elves to want to halt the changes of time.
Yes.
The image he used in the letter was something to the effect of wanting to linger on a favorite chapter of a book that they're still reading through.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a little bit of that in Fëanor here. It's a temptation, and it's a foolish pursuit and a futile pursuit.
Well, but it's something the elves do almost consistently throughout the entire Legendarium.
Yeah,
I mean, it's what the three rings were for. It was to preserve things as they were.
Exactly. And there's another similarity between the Silmarils and the rings, isn't there?
You're right. You really are.
But anyway, it was an interesting thing that I came across, because again, I've read this book enough times that I am firmly in the Fëanor is a bad guy camp.
You have to.
But this is I think a a rare moment of good intentions. But
It is.
you know, we know where good intentions lead one, don't we?
Yeah, that's some nice pavement. Where are we headed?
Right.
You know, I find it interesting, this idea of saving the light. I mean, what, putting it on a backup drive? I mean, is this, you know, do you have offsite storage? Is this, I mean, that's great. You made a local copy, but man, you didn't put it on the cloud?
Oh man.
Oh,
that's good.
sorry. That's what happens when one day you come home from vacation and you find your entire client folders gone because your drive died.
Oh man, I'm sorry.
Yeah, this was back in, oh goodness, this was 8 years ago now, I think. We came back from vacation and my external hard drive, which was a terabyte, which 8 years ago, by the way, was like unheard of.
That was a big drive, yeah.
Well, it turns
Back
out
in the day.
it was actually two 500 gigabyte drives in a RAID that I didn't know. It was marketed as a 1 terabyte, but it was a RAID 0, which if anybody is listening is familiar with computers at all, you know a RAID 0 is great for speed, not great for reliability, because if you lose one drive, all the data's gone. Anyway, long sidetrack. I had to send it to one of those clean rooms and pay outrageous amounts of money to get my client data back. But I learned a lesson, and that is back up the light of the trees and then get offsite storage.
Well, that's only good if you can actually recover the data later on.
That
as
is
we'll
true.
see.
That is true. You're right. If you can, yeah. Well, we have the data, but we have no medium to put it in now.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway,
We're
so sorry, folks.
We're skipping ahead.
We're
foreshadowing ahead.
really stretching that metaphor way too far.
We are. Why don't you take us back to the text?
Oh goodness. Well, it's
I want you to
actually
read this next paragraph.
yeah the description of the Silmarils themselves. So I'll just read this if you don't mind.
Please.
As 3 great jewels they were in form, but not until the end, when Fëanor shall return, who perished ere the sun was made, and sits now in the halls of awaiting, and comes no more among his kin. Not until the sun passes and the moon falls, shall it be known of what substance they were made. Like the crystal of diamonds it appeared, and yet was more strong than adamant, so that no violence could mar it or break it within the kingdom of Arda. Yet that crystal was to the Silmarils but as is the body to the children of Iluvatar, the house of its inner fire, that is within it, and yet in all parts of it, and is its life. And the inner fire of the Silmarils Fëanor made of the blended light of the trees of Valinor, which lives in them yet, though the trees have long withered and shine no more. Therefore, even in the darkness of the deepest treasury, the Silmarils of their own radiance shone like the stars of Varda. And yet, as were they indeed living things, they rejoiced in light, and received it, and gave it back in hues more marvelous than before.
Oh,
They must have been amazing.
can we rewind the recording and let me read that one instead?
Well,
Beautiful. That's a beautiful one.
It
It's
is a great passage.
so wonderful. I love this idea that the crystal is compared to the body, or we've used the word Hroa on this podcast a few times now, of the children of Iluvatar, and is the house of its inner fire. Which,
Right.
if you want to carry that analogy forward, then
It's the
then
Fëa.
the light is like a Fëa. If these were indeed living things, which they were not,
No.
but they almost seem to be so, just in the way that they reacted to the world around them.
That is
It's
such
just
an
a
amazing
beautiful,
thought.
Beautiful.
And just as the bodies are the house of the inner fire for the children, it also makes me think a little bit of the way the Valar clothe themselves, and that whole kind of thing. I mean,
The raiment, yeah.
the raiment. So it all kind of ties in together that they all. But yeah, I love this idea, that Fëa and Hroa analogy, and certainly Tolkien draws that pretty strongly here. I mean, the house of its inner fire.
Yeah. I mean, even the use of the term inner fire
Inner
reminds
fire.
us of secret fire, doesn't
Yeah.
it?
Well, and let's not forget Fëanor is the spirit of fire. So it's
That's true.
This is there's some strong ties here.
That's true. Yeah.
Must have been. I just can't even conceive of what this would have looked like.
I know.
But
And we don't know what they were made of. We
No.
will not until the end of the
well,
world.
the end of the world, right?
When Fëanor is finally
Fëanor
allowed
gets to
return.
come back around. Yeah.
When he's finally released from his prison term in the halls of
Doesn't that seem a
Mantis.
little bit? I mean, Melkor only had to serve 3 ages,
Right.
But well, trust me, when you see what Fëanor ends up doing, you'll agree it's a just sentence.
Yeah.
Interesting. No violence could mar it. Now, I have to tell you, that made me start thinking of the idea of what did they look like sculpted gems, or did they look like rough crystals, hewn out of stone? They were artificial. He made them.
Right.
But once they were made, I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is I'm thinking, how diamonds come out of the ground and a jeweler will,
Shape
cut
them with
and
other,
shape.
cut them with other diamonds.
Cut them with
right?
other diamonds, right, and make the facets so that you get this particular shape that it's the shape that enhances the color and the transmission of light and all of that. Mm-hmm. Could these be worked like a diamond? And if so, I guess you'd need the other Silmarils to do it, right? I mean,
maybe,
because certainly no other object is hard enough.
Yeah. Or the other idea that I wonder is it somehow was it somehow the process of capturing the light that made them unworkable at that point? I mean, there's nothing in the text. I don't know if there's really anything in the text to support that, but
it's an interesting speculation.
Almost imagining sort of creating this house, out of crystal, and
all of a sudden the crystal takes
shaping
on
it,
an additional characteristic of being that hard.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
it's
interesting.
Very interesting idea, though.
It is. I think the thing that made me think that is this, you hear these theories. One of these days, actually, I really do think we need to do like a Mythbusters episode. And one of the myths we could bust is that the Arkenstone is a Silmaril.
Oh, yeah.
Because we see that a
come
lot.
Up every once in a while.
It does come up. And, people will try to make the wildest speculations in order to hold to that theory. But if a gem can't be worked, then certainly it's not the Silmaril. I mean, it's not the Arkenstone, because the Arkenstone was crafted and shaped by the dwarves.
Cut and shaped by the dwarves,
That's given in the text.
So it's given in The Hobbit, yeah.
If the Silmarils could not be worked, that is, there was no way to change their facets, to chip away at it and make a different shape out of it, well, then the Arkenstone, by definition alone, by this alone, could not be a Silmaril.
Right.
So, though I think we'll get to plenty of more reasons why that can't be.
Well, there's one more reason right below this, which, if I may,
yes, you may. Please do.
So once he's made them, all who dwelt in Aman were filled with wonder and delight at the work of Fëanor, and Varda hallowed the Silmarils, so that thereafter no mortal flesh, nor hands unclean, nor anything of evil will might touch them, but it was scorched and withered. And Mandos foretold that the fates of Arda, earth, sea, and air, lay locked within them. The heart of Fëanor was fast bound to these things that he himself had made.
Wow, and that last line is more important than it sounds, doesn't it? I mean, I think we always focus on the hallowing, don't we?
We do. Well, there's so much in this paragraph. I think the first one, I think, is answer number 2 to why the Arkenstone is not a Silmaril. Varda hallowed them so that, no mortal flesh, nor hands unclean, nor anything of evil will could touch them.
This isn't all three. It's not. Right. It's any of these three. If any of these three,
you don't have to have evil will. Just if you have mortal flesh. If you are a dwarf,
or a hobbit,
or a human, we will see this later in the Silmarillion. Well, actually,
the human later in the Silmarillion is an exception.
There's an exception in the Silmarillion, isn't there?
But the exception is explained in the story. So.
Right. But definitely, a typical mortal could not have handled the Silmarils to craft them, and so couldn't have handled it to craft it. Couldn't have handled it to pick it up out of a dragon horde, and hand it to Bard. Before the Battle of the Five Armies. It's just
not possible.
It just wasn't going to happen. But don't want to belabor that too much. It's just important to know
why belabor the obvious.
Right, exactly.
I've just ticked off a couple dozen people.
This also, though, kind of makes me feel a little bit more confident in my idea that the Silmarils Fëanor didn't start out with evil intentions here. No. I mean, I don't think that Varda would have hallowed gems that were designed to be prisons for the light of the trees. I think
you make a good
hallowed. Yeah, she hallowed them because they were things of beauty. They were a preservative. She saw it as a preservative. That sounds weird, but you know what I'm trying to say. They were
they
intended
served
to
a
preserve them.
preservatory function. Is preservatory a word?
It is now. We're
I
going
love
with
making
it.
up words.
But so yeah, I think that hallowing is important.
Huge.
Mandos's prophecy, huge.
Very
The
and
fates
absolutely
of
accurate
Arda.
as he always is.
Yep. And here's one of those things that we're not going to fully understand this sentence until near the end. But definitely the fate of Arda in a very broad sense is clearly locked within them.
Yeah.
And then so let's talk about this Fëanor's heart, fast bound to
Wow.
these things that he himself had made.
Fast bound.
Mhm.
Binding
I mean,
is rarely a good thing.
Good point.
I mean,
That is
I
a
guess
good
under
point.
the right circumstances, it could be.
You know, the
But
bonds of
yeah.
holy matrimony, I suppose.
Right,
But,
right, exactly.
but yeah, I mean, we've talked before about a passage or a sentence that comes up much later in the book, but I think we've already mentioned it once on this
We
podcast.
have,
That
yeah.
love not too well the work of thy hands and the
Yes.
devices of thy heart, which almost speaks to an elven king later on.
Mm-hmm.
But it's certainly applicable here, isn't it?
Very
I
much
mean,
so. Yeah.
a bit of advice that Fëanor could have benefited from.
Well, but he didn't listen to counsel. That was one. Right.
This is very true. This is very true.
None changed his. Few changed his courses by counsel, none by force. Yeah.
So right away, I mean, he's created these things. He's immediately fallen in love with them
Yeah.
to an excessive degree, and he's not the only one.
No, Melkor lusts for them next, and he starts to try to kind of split the Valar and the elves. He knows that in doing that, he'll give himself an opportunity to get at Fëanor and get at the Silmarils. And he can't even get away from the memory of them. I love this line, that the memory of their radiance was a gnawing fire in his heart.
Oh wow, yeah,
Remember how, when we were in the Ainulindale, how he lusted after light, and how there was this thing that he had going on with Varda,
Yep.
where it was clear that there was some sort of lust there.
She rejected him.
She
Yeah.
rejected him, and his desire for the light is not that he might bask in the light. It's that he would possess the light and possess it exclusively.
Yeah,
So anyway, he really wants these,
right.
and he knows that his best chance is to split the elves from the Valar. And this line,
and it's
go ahead.
well, just this idea that he's just willing to just destroy everything.
Oh
That's
yeah,
wholesome
to get
in
his
Valinor.
one thing that he wants. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Well, that's
Classic
what Melkor
of
does.
course.
It is classic
Exactly.
Melkor.
Yeah.
He doesn't care about the consequences of his actions as long as he gets what he wants.
Right.
And that is an absolute classic villain. That's a sociopath, frankly.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. When you don't think about the consequences of your actions, and you don't care about the consequences of your actions, and you only go after what you want,
That's a good point. Yeah.
it's either it's either a sociopath or a presidential candidate. I'm not sure which.
so true.
Of either
So
party, I am
very
neutral
true.
on that. It's,
So very true.
but I love this line that we get here, describing Melkor's efforts. And man, is this truth or what? I mean, let me read this, and then this just sounds like you could talk about this at school or at work. This is exactly the kind of thing that happens in real life. But long was he at work, and slow at first, and barren was his labor. But he that sows lies, in the end shall not lack of a harvest. And soon he may rest from toil indeed, while others reap and sow in his stead. Ever Melkor found some ears that would heed him, and some tongues that would enlarge what they had heard. And his lies passed from friend to friend, as secrets of which the knowledge proves the teller wise. It's the telephone game,
Right.
But it's also the gossip. I mean, as secrets of which the knowledge proves the teller wise. Hey, let me tell you this thing, because I want you to think better of me, because I know
Yeah.
something you don't.
It's the idea that this kind of knowledge, although it's usually not true knowledge.
Put those air quotes around that.
Yeah, right. It's this idea that that's sort of a weapon one uses to just advance one's own status in society.
Yeah.
It's,
That's what gossip does. Gossip
Yeah.
tears down to build up the people that are talking about the victim of the gossip.
That's so true. And this idea that, he that sows lies in the end shall not lack of a harvest.
That sounds like I know you don't come from that sort of, doesn't that just sound like that sounds like a proverb? I should be able to look that up in Proverbs 14, whatever, That
right.
And I'm sure it jives with some of the actual words in Proverbs, but it really does sound like that. It's got that sort of biblical sound. And certainly it's a truism. I mean, if you keep lying, in the end, it's, if you're lying to, for your own benefit, you're going to get the harvest. Eventually you're going to get a harvest you don't want.
True.
But nasty stuff.
Yeah. Soon he may rest from toil. I mean, it's,
others
it's like
do his job
Melkor,
for him.
Melkor starts it, but boy, do others finish it.
Oh, wow.
And that is,
well,
that
when
is
you
true
appeal
of
to
not
pride,
only lies.
when you appeal to pride, and that's what he does. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this next line, but I want to make sure we note it because we're going to come across something similar in a bit. Bitterly did the Noldor atone for the folly of their open ears in the days that followed after. I just want to everybody hold on to bitterly did they atone. We'll come back. Okay. I noticed before we go on to the next thing, because I know when we were talking about our notes, I completely skipped over this. Look on the next page. The next page. I'm sorry, I don't know if it's the next page in the volume. I forgot to mark my page numbers. I'm looking at the electronic copy. So forget what I just said about page. That when he walked among them, amid his fair words, others were woven so subtly that many who heard them believed in recollection that they rose from the thought. There's that word again.
Yep.
And once again, it's
Subtle.
not a good thing. So
Right.
if you're remembering our last episode where we talked about the word subtle, bingo, we got it again. So just wanted to point that out.
You know what? And I realized it appeared once already in this chapter, and we forgot to highlight it. Fëanor's subtle skill.
Yeah, that might have been more a different meaning. I thought about that too, because it wasn't that he was dissembling at that point.
That's true.
I mean,
That's a good point.
He did. He began along in secret labor. He summoned all his lore and his subtle skill. That might be more his, detailed skill. His
you're probably right. Especially given what
might be a
especially given what we were talking about, his intentions being possibly a little bit purer at first. That's a good point.
Yeah. But it certainly here, this is what he means. So subtle.
Yeah.
Again, dissembling his purposes, but good stuff. Good stuff.
Well, and this just makes me feel like, again, Fëanor thinks he never got any counsel from Melkor, but he could have gotten ideas in his head that he just didn't know came from Melkor.
Yeah.
Again, Melkor has this way of starting discord and just letting others finish it.
Yes, he does.
So.
Yes, he does. Well, you pointed out some things when we were talking about this before the recording about the realms. You talked about that. That was a bit that you wanted to mention, right?
Yeah, I feel like there's a bit of pride here. One of the things that I keep seeing over and over in this chapter is pride and jealousy. And, when Melkor is speaking subtly among them, this is actually the next sentence after the one you just mentioned. Visions he would conjure in their hearts of the mighty realms that they could have ruled at their own will, in power and freedom in the east. And then whispers went abroad that the Valar had brought the Eldar to Aman because of their jealousy, fearing that the beauty of the Quendi and the Maker's power that Ilúvatar had bequeathed to them would grow too great for the Valar to govern as the elves waxed and spread over the wide lands of the world. This is clearly Melkor appealing to the pride of the elves. This idea that, if we just weren't held back here in Aman, we could be rulers in Middle Earth. And this idea that they think that the Valar are jealous of them because of their, this Maker's power, the subcreative power that Ilúvatar has given to them. It's a clear appeal to pride.
It is.
In the next paragraph, I don't know if you had anything that you wanted to talk about in this paragraph, but in the next,
a little bit. I mean, we would discuss together, but not to read or anything. But before we move on to that, though, when I was talking about the mighty realms, it made me think. I'm sorry to mention her, but it made me think of Galadriel, because that really was her weakness in this. When later on when they leave, we find out that though she is not friendly with Fëanor, as we said, they are unfriends. She did also have this desire to rule a land of her own.
Oh, that's true.
And to have, a realm. And that's, that was arguably, not even arguably, that was flat out, a prideful thing.
That's true.
So yeah, and she was just as much, falling in for the lies of Melkor and.
Well, and we know from the first time we
Noldor.
Yeah. Well, and we know from the first time we meet her in Lord of the Rings that that there is a bit of temptation to rule as a queen instead of a dark lord.
Yeah.
That doesn't.
All shall love me and despair.
Yeah. Right. That's not purely a theoretical thing that she's rebutting with that little speech. I mean, that is something that's in her heart somewhere, and she's resisting it. She passes the test.
There's a lot about her
in resisting it.
Yeah, there's a lot about her in terms of that development from leaving Valinor and in order to establish a realm, and then finally being given an opportunity to come back, because as we'll see soon enough, those who leave are told you're not welcome.
Right.
Don't let the door hit you on the way out. But she's given the opportunity to come back, but she doesn't right away. And I think it's in large part it's because she wants to make sure that, I don't know, there's something to me that she wants to make sure she passes that test. That she is ready to return. But anyway, now we're getting like thousands of years ahead of ourselves. thousands of Middle Earth years, and maybe thousands of Prancing Pony podcast years at the rate we're going.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, what did you think when you get this part about the fact that the Valar knew that the men were coming, but the elves yet knew not of it, for Manwë had not revealed it to them? Why would he not reveal it to them? And was that a tactical error on his part?
You asked me that, and that's a really good point. I hadn't thought about it, but I think it may be. I mean, I feel like, we know the Valar are fallible.
Yeah,
They do make mistakes frequently.
Yes.
They try, and they're powerful, and they're awesome and everything, but they make mistakes, and I do feel like I sometimes feel like, because remember, Manwë doesn't understand the nature of evil.
No, that's true.
And I wonder if, because he's seen the way Melkor has reacted to things, I wonder if he's afraid, maybe he's afraid of exactly this, that if he were to say something to the elves about the coming of men, that they might react in exactly this way. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's pure speculation, folks. We're just kind of bouncing the idea off of it. Obviously, hindsight's 20/20. Yes, it was a mistake, but what would he have done differently, or why would he have done this? I don't know. I mean,
I don't know.
They're over there. They're over there to stay. I mean, not forcibly, but that's their intention. So you'd think it'd be like, well, when we go back.
That's true. If the idea is that they're going to stay there, then what possible threat could they see in men? That's a really interesting question. I don't know. And again, I think that Manwë had the best of intentions, I'm sure,
Certainly.
but just I think was probably just trying to keep peace and justice, and didn't want to freak him out. Maybe I don't know.
Maybe he didn't see it as relevant yet. Maybe because he didn't know
so.
when
Well,
they
that
were
could be.
coming.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a lot of things, but it's just one of those things that comes to mind when I read that. I thought, well, interesting.
Yeah.
But I thought it was also interesting at the end of that paragraph that little have the Valar ever prevailed to sway the wills of men. And that's true. I think they've learned a lesson.
Yeah.
They brought the Eldar over, and I think they what was it? Once bitten, twice shy. I don't think they desired to reach out to men. Well, there's also another reason, and that is that, as we will kind of theorize, if men come to the undying lands, it would burn them out faster. But even aside from that, I don't think they wanted to be involved. I think they recognized that their independence, their ability to determine their own fate and do the other things that we find out that are part of the gift of Iluvatar, lead them to kind of leave them alone for the most part. The few times that Valar interact with men they're very important. Let's put it that way.
That's true. Well, and that is very interesting, because if you look back to the lies that Melkor told, was that the Valar saw that they might more easily sway this short-lived and weaker race, when in fact it is actually the opposite.
Yeah.
So that's very
Well,
interesting.
except for Melkor, who very easily sways the short-lived and
That-
weaker race, and
That is very true.
you know he takes the fact that they're short-lived and weaker and makes
And capitalizes on that.
makes hay
Yeah.
while the sun shines. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Man,
Yeah. Wow.
good stuff. Well, let's see. Thus, ere the Valar were aware, the peace of Valinor was poisoned. That's a great word choice on Tolkien's part, isn't it? Because
Poisoned. Yeah.
it's this kind of
it
thing where
speaks
you
of-
might not notice it right away.
Yeah. Right.
You know?
Exactly. It speaks of the damage is done. You just may not know it yet.
Yeah.
You may not be showing symptoms
And it's
yet.
internal. You don't have external symptoms, but there's this
Right.
poison running through your bloodstream, and
Right.
it's heartbreaking. We see again that all the Noldor began to murmur against them, and many became filled with pride. So I shouldn't have said all. But it's interesting that what we see here is either a side effect of pride or maybe as a cause of the pride, is the fact that they forgot how much of what they had and what they knew came to them in gift from the Valar.
Mm-hmm. That's. I mean, that is pride.
Wow.
I mean, that is a classic
Total pride.
act of pride. Forgetting where you've come from, forgetting how much you owe to,
Yeah.
those who have been kind to you, those who have gifted you. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a
Ugly
line
stuff.
here that I know you want to touch on for sure. Right after that.
Yeah, there is. We speak so much about Fëanor thinking he's above the councils of Melkor, but here we go. We see fiercest burned the new flame of desire for freedom and wider realms in the eager heart of Fëanor, and Melkor laughed in his secrecy, for to that mark his lies had been addressed, hating Fëanor above all and lusting ever for the Silmarils.
Wow.
But these he was not suffered to approach. For though at great feasts Fëanor would wear them, blazing on his brow, at other times they were guarded close, locked in the deep chambers of his hoard in Tirion. For Fëanor began to love the Silmarils with a greedy love, and grudged the sight of them to all save his father and his 7 sons. He seldom remembered now that the light within them was not his own.
Wow. Just like
So there's
the things, it's like
there's an echo there of that.
that came
Yeah,
to them
forgetting
at
what.
gift. Yep. Forgetting where things
exactly.
came from.
Yep.
And
But
didn't we get something? We got a comment from somebody
We did.
that made
We
me
did.
think of this when we talked about all that he begrudged the sight of them all, save his father and his 7 sons. Nerdano?
Right, exactly. We had it was Tom. Yeah, Tom H, who's listening to us and is following us on Twitter, made the comment about something to the effect of, well, I had posted a picture of this page from my Silmarillion with all my handwritten notes of pride, greed, pride. Which it's truly laughable the amount of pride.
Oh, it's
is in this
everywhere.
paragraph.
Everywhere.
But yeah, it was Tom who saw that and said, I've never noticed this before, but I think he kept the Silmarils hidden from Nerdanel too.
Clearly.
And yeah, I mean, his father and his 7 sons, that's pretty clear. That is
wonder.
not good. I mean, that's
No.
just
Well,
bad
all 7
behavior.
sons have been born, so it is
True.
possible that the love has failed. We do know that they were eventually what was it that his later actions grieved her.
later deeds grieved her. Yeah.
Yeah, and they were split. They were what's the word?
Estranged.
Estranged, yes.
Yeah.
Because of course there would be no divorce. This isn't
Right.
it's not the 20th century humanity here. We're
Right.
talking about elves.
Right.
So it's,
I mean, clearly there were many later deeds that he did that grieved her, but
yeah, there are
but
a
it-
few. We're going to get
but
to them.
I mean, I know where you're going with this. They could have been estranged already, or maybe this was one of those that.
That's what I'm
that grieved
thinking.
her.
That's what I'm thinking
Yeah.
because this is, at this point, I love this other phrase too, the deep chambers of his hoard. This isn't,
yeah.
his safe deposit box. This is his hoard.
Yeah. This is dragon stuff.
That's right. That's what I'm thinking. I mean, what's the
Yeah.
word that comes to your mind when you hear the word hoard? And it's not a good thing. It's dragons.
Right.
But again, why not? He loves the Silmarils with a greedy love, just like dragons love their gold with a greedy love.
Absolutely. And there actually is a line in The Hobbit, which if I can.
Did you find that?
I did. Yeah, I've got it in my notes here. It's bear with me here. It's
right.
dragons dragons may not have much real use for all their wealth,
Ah,
but they know it to an ounce as a rule,
yes, the market value.
especially after long possession. And Smaug was no exception. Yeah. That just sounds like Fëanor here. He
Doesn't it?
doesn't locking beautiful jewels,
The most beautiful things ever made, ever,
Yeah,
in the whole
you know,
entire universe,
locking them
in
a
all of
box
Aeon.
somewhere.
And he puts them in a
Yeah.
box.
It's just not. Obviously, you're not using them. You're not getting any enjoyment or pleasure out of them. You're just keeping them because they're yours, and it's just this dragonish sense of possession. It's just. It's not good.
Man. No.
Sorry, it's just not good.
No, it really isn't good at all. And at this point, yeah, if he's not estranged now, he's about to be. I mean,
Oh,
this
yeah.
is bad news that he doesn't, his wife's not even involved at this point.
Yeah.
But boy, this is really the turning point for Fëanor. I mean, we see the signs in him earlier, and to be fair, that's all they are. We see the signs that he's, manipulative and wanting to be domineering, and that he's, subtle, that he hides his purpose. But now we get the explicit
Yeah.
statements that he's now greedy, and that
Greedy and proud.
he's got a hoard, and he's the pride, and it's just everywhere.
Yeah.
Oh, it is heartbreaking, because as one of the things we talked about in the last episode, in that debate that the Valar had, talking about the statute of Finwë and Miriel, Aule talked about Fëanor being the most gifted of all the children, and he's not wrong. He's not wrong.
true.
Fëanor had more than any other of the children of Ilúvatar, and for him to squander it like this, that might be the wrong word. I mean, he created the Silmarils, but for him to not end up being, to not use his power for good, purely good,
Yeah.
is disappointing. But
I'm not sure squander is the wrong word. I think you're right on with squander, because
Yeah,
I mean
maybe.
he does create the Silmarils, and that is an incredible act of skill.
yeah,
But the it's the potential that's squandered.
yes, it is.
The potential to do great things with, I mean, the Silmarils themselves, once he's created them, are a gift, and the potential to do great things with that gift, now as later we will see.
Yes,
and
yes, that's
he will
true. He'll have one
he
more
will waste that opportunity. Yeah,
Yeah, you're right.
and
Squander
he'll
is a
waste
good
it.
word. I just didn't know it.
That's why I'm here to help you.
I'm brilliant, but I forget sometimes.
I'm here to help you remember how brilliant you are. Which I'm not sure what that says of me, actually.
I was going to say, that's pretty sad, Sean. Oh, man. We have a good time.
Goodness.
Okay, so we've talked about the sons. We've talked about him forgetting that the light within him was not his own. This is important because this is really evidence that he does not know his place. He forgets
sure,
that he's
yeah.
borrowed something from the Valar. And it's important for us to note that because it comes up later in the next episode. We're going to talk about that at length. So just wanted to point that out before we move on to the fact that he's not the only one we can actually lay blame on.
No.
We
no,
find
not
out
at
that,
all.
of course, because they're both the elder sons of Finwë by different women, Fëanor and Fingolfin are high princes. But they each grew proud and jealous of their rights and possessions. So Fingolfin was not, totally innocent, but we will see shortly that he is mostly innocent. I guess, what's that doctrine called? There's a legal doctrine where they compare, it has to do with like clean hands for like contract negotiation.
Okay. We'll have to look that
Anyway,
one up. I don't know.
it might be it's the doctrine of clean hands. Basically, if you've not done anything wrong,
Or maybe it's whatever clean hands is in Latin.
well, there is a clean hands doctrine, but I can't. Anyway, it's been so long.
Okay.
Yeah. No, boy. All right. So let's take a look here. What do we see?
But you're right. I mean, Fëanor is not exclusively to blame.
No. We see earlier that most of the Noldor have become proud.
Yeah.
Many, I should say, many became filled with pride. Most.
Yeah. Well, one thing I like here, maybe like is the wrong word, but the idea that Melkor is putting different lies in each brother, to Fëanor. Of course,
Playing
he's not
one
speaking
against
directly
the
to
other
Fëanor.
is his strength. That's for sure.
Oh yeah. I mean, the what's getting back to Fëanor is that Fingolfin is plotting to usurp Fëanor's place as the first, the first son, or the inheritance of the first son. But then to Indus's sons, Fingolfin and Finarfin, he says, "Beware, small love has the proud son of Miriel ever had for the children of Indus."
Yeah.
I mean, that's not inaccurate. That is very true.
No, it is not.
Fëanor never has had great love for the sons of Indus. And so it's interesting that you see the kind of lies that Melkor engages in. They're the kind of lies that have the seed of truth in them.
Yeah. Well, those are the best kind of lies, aren't they?
Yeah, that's true.
I should say not
You're
best, most
if
effective.
You're trying to sow some discord, better start with a little.
Oh yeah,
start with a seed of truth.
Seed of truth. That's true.
Yeah.
Well, it gets to a really. Well, let's see. Let's talk briefly. Notice Finarfin's not mentioned here. I think we should probably point that out. I mean, he's mentioned in the sense that Melkor tells him something, but he's not the one who's listed as proud and jealous. Only Fëanor and Fingolfin. But I think
that is true.
That may have more to do with the fact that it's only Fëanor and Fingolfin that are the high princes.
I think you're right about that. We talked a little bit about this before recording, and my thought at first was, we know that Finarfin is the one who's most wise of heart, and I kind of thought, well, maybe he saw through this, but
he might. That's true too.
He might have, but I don't know. I mean, I think some of the later actions of the House of Finarfin suggest otherwise.
That is true.
True. I don't know. I think you're probably right. I think there probably just wasn't.
He's not mentioned because he's not a high prince. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And there probably wasn't. Melkor probably wasn't focused on him as much because he wasn't a high prince. He probably had less of a stake.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, once again, we see pride and anger. You talked about pride and jealousy. Well, now we get that pride and anger are awake among the Noldor. And now we get something very interesting. This comes back to Joan's question a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
In that time, the Noldor began the smithying of swords and axes and spears. Shields also they made, displaying the tokens of many houses and kindreds that vied one with another. And these only they wore abroad, and of other weapons they did not speak, for each believed that he alone had received the warning. And Fëanor made a secret forge, of which not even Melkor was aware. And there he tempered fell swords for himself and for his sons, and made tall helms with plumes of red. Bitterly did Matan rue the day when he taught to the husband of Nerdanel all the lore of metalwork that he had learned of Aule. Well, so first, we end with the bitterly. Remember I mentioned earlier, don't forget the bitterly?
That's right. That's right. Yep, there's your bitterly again, huh?
Let's just remember that Tolkien doesn't use words accidentally. So if we go from bitterly did the Noldor atone to just 2 pages later, bitterly did Matan rue the day, we know there's some bitterness.
Yeah,
this is really all we know. But I like the phrase.
They both are. You got to imagine that they're, both Matan and the Noldor in general, kind of feeling the same sense of,
regret.
Oh, I shouldn't have done that.
Regret, total regret, and I mean, with the Noldor, that regret wouldn't happen until later, right?
True.
That it was in the days that followed.
That's true. In the days that followed after. That's
but
true.
Whereas Matan is certainly ruining it right now, that his former son-in-law is, going around making swords.
Yeah.
Which, let me just tell you, is not a good basis for a system of government, right?
Did it take 14 episodes before we got to a Monty Python reference? Beautifully done.
We needed Nerdanel in a lake tossing the swords, though. That's what
we should have. Strange women lying in ponds distributing swords.
Oh man.
Beautiful.
You know what? That is really the problem here is they didn't have an anarcho-syndicalist commune.
Okay. Hope I'm being repressed.
Come and see the violence inherent in the system. Well, we're about to see some violence inherent in the system.
We are about to see some violence inherent in the system.
But yeah, I mean, this kind of, let's touch base with Joan's question here on this. I mean, we don't get a specific answer. We don't know why. We don't know. We don't get much information on is Melkor teaching them, how to build a shield wall, how to build a phalanx. I mean, is he teaching them battlefield
tortoise
techniques?
Formation?
Tortoise,
yeah. No, I mean he's certainly teaching the Noldor at least to make weapons.
Yeah.
And maybe not Fëanor directly. Maybe Fëanor. Obviously, Fëanor is acting on some techniques he's learned from Matan. I almost wonder if maybe what Matan and maybe even Melkor started out was just teaching the Noldor how to make better tools. How to. And this is total speculation, of course, but you can imagine them starting with just maybe stronger alloys and sharper tools and better blades and things like that, and then gradually,
Right.
maybe under Melkor's suggestion, this axe becomes a little less like a wood axe and maybe a little more like a battle axe,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Oh, if you think this will cut a tree, wait till you see what it does to a person.
Right,
to a
right,
roa.
exactly. Right. And I don't know that Melkor would have come right out and said like, hey, so Fingolfin, come here. This is a sword, and this is what you do with a sword.
This is the pointy end. Keep this.
It's in your brother.
Yeah.
Stick this in your brother. This is how, it seems very bold. for
Preferably
Melkor.
right in this area
Right,
here between
right.
the.
Exactly. But so that seems like it would be a little too bold even for Melkor, especially
Well,
now.
yeah,
when he's
remember he's subtle and not in the
Yeah.
good way. He's very. He knows for the most
Yeah.
part. He makes a mistake later in terms of his subtlety. He lacks his
Yeah.
subtlety a little bit too much, but
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
but for the most part, yeah. This is such an interesting subject. I hope we're able to. I know we're going to see some more things on this, but yeah, we just don't have a lot of information in terms of what exactly is Melkor teaching them, and how much of this did they figure
Yeah.
out on their own.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to throw one more thing out there, which is, we know that there were sports, athletics in Valinor to a degree. I mean, we know
Yeah.
Tulkas like to wrestle and to race. We know Orome liked to hunt. Fëanor and his sons hunted.
And you don't hunt with flowers; you hunt with spears and bows and arrows, and so
right.
weapons are not totally
Right.
unheard of.
Exactly. And so I feel like it's this is very sad and morbid thought, but I don't think it's a big step from wrestling someone for sport or hunting an animal for sport or for food to realizing that if you could use that same tool or that same
in anger
maneuver
and hatred,
to hurt someone, all you really need is the intent. And I think Melkor definitely supplied the intent, didn't he?
Yeah. Well, or he fanned the flame of intent.
True.
Into
True.
pride and anger.
True.
I think this is huge. This idea that they're now making weapons. It's a big shift in terms of their status there in Valinor. This is a peaceful place.
This is paradise.
An ultimately peaceful place. I mean, in a way that none of us can even conceive.
Right.
I mean, you think the
And
west coast of Maui is paradise. It's nothing. compared to
right.
this.
This is a literal paradise.
Yeah.
As near to heaven on earth as you're going to find.
Yeah.
And they're bringing weapons into it. They're making weapons. It's ugly.
It really is, and it's and here we get really the key to the chapter. One single line speaks it all. Of their quarrels came at length the end of the high days of Valinor and the evening of its ancient glory.
Mm-hmm.
In our previous chapters we talked about, this was the noontide of the Blessed Realm, or this was when we talked about the time started ticking at the beginning when they first started measuring the day.
Mm-hmm.
The clock is around 6:30 or 7, and
that's right.
The sun's going down now. It's
Yeah.
now the evening of its ancient glory.
The light is the light's not going to be around much
the
longer.
light's waning, and soon it'll be dark.
Yeah.
It's really telling, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It was soon. It's evening now. Soon it's going to be night, and it really soon it will be.
Right. There's one more thing I got here in my notes before we get too far down that line. There's one other thing I wanted to say about shields.
Oh yeah.
Because we talked about the weapons, of course, but then they also have this idea that they had shields that they stored. The shields were the only thing that they actually wore openly. One thing I picked up on when I was just reading this was, we tend to think of shields as protection, right? And so, the first reaction to this might be, oh, well, they're wearing shields openly, just in case something happens.
Right.
But
people walking around with a bulletproof vest, but nobody's got guns.
right, just in case. But think about this from a medieval perspective. What's one of the big medieval purposes of shields?
Identification.
Exactly. To show your identification, your heraldic device. What family are you from? What lord do you serve? As Tolkien's words are tokens of many houses.
Yeah.
I think
and
this is important.
And that these kindreds vied with one another.
Yes, that's true. That's true. They vied with one another. So, the depth of division here within the House of Finwë is deep.
Very deep.
And so this wearing of shields is, I it's not just protection. It's not just,
No,
it's not
it's
a
polarization.
I mean, it is. It's
It is.
kind of like gang colors in a way.
It is,
think,
isn't it?
It's kind
You're
of
right.
like an open display and kind of therefore a threat to somebody
Yeah.
who's not in your
Of another kindred.
yeah, exactly. But anyway, yeah, I mean, end of the high days, indeed.
Yeah,
I think
huge.
is really key.
Well, and then Fëanor starts to talk about rebellion, doesn't he?
He
This
does.
is, open words of rebellion. And this is interesting. I think this is the first time in this chapter we get this word, but it is not the last. Crying aloud that he, Fëanor, would depart from Valinor back to the world without, and would deliver the Noldor from thraldom if they would follow him. Now, just hold on to that, because we see that word a few more times. But just in case you're not sure what it means to be a thrall or to be in thraldom, that word comes from the Old English thrail, or slave, which is from Old Norse. And it is a slave. It is truly the state of being in someone's total and complete power. Slave, servant, or captive, but typically slave. So let's just be clear. He is going to deliver the Noldor from slavery if they would follow him. So let's just not...
Is his claim. Wow.
Yeah, that's his claim.
That's
So-
a bold claim.
It's a very bold claim. And let's see here. I think you've got this next one, don't you?
Let's see.
Fingolfin
Yes, I
hastens
do.
to his
You're right.
halls.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So then there was great unrest in Tirion, and Finwë was troubled, and he summoned all his lords to council. But Fingolfin hastened to his halls, and stood before him, saying, King and father, wilt thou not restrain the pride of our brother, Finwë, who is called the Spirit of Fire all too truly? By what right does he speak for all our people as if he were king? Thou it was who long ago spoke before the Quendi, bidding them accept the summons of the Valar to Aman. Thou it was that led the Noldor upon the long road through the perils of Middle-earth to the light of Eldamar. If thou dost not now repent of it, 2 sons at least thou hast to honor thy words.
Reasonable statement.
Very reasonable
He's basically
statement.
just saying, take a stand, one way or the other.
Yeah.
Either denounce Finwë or not.
Yeah.
But
And
know
here
that, me
and
and
here we see,
Finarfin,
yeah,
we're
me
on
and
this
Finarfin
side.
are right here with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, here we see Fingolfin. He's not without blame in this chapter, but here we see him standing up and trying to do the right thing.
Yeah. This is that steadfastness, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's his steadfastness to a good end.
Yes. Yeah.
Occasionally,
Yes.
occasionally he makes mistakes being so steadfast.
That is true.
But yeah, I like that he's standing up here, and he's going. He knows his place. He's going to their father. He's
Yes.
not taking it directly to Fëanor, which I don't know. I guess you could say maybe confront him directly, but I don't know. I feel like there's a humility
No.
and there's a recognition of place by going to their father.
I think there is. And notice, I like that he starts out by saying king and father. This is a reminder, you're
that's
not
true.
just my dad and his dad. You're the king of our people. And you have a responsibility here to either say, no, Fëanor isn't speaking for me, or yes, I suppose. I mean, certainly Fingolfin's hoping it's not.
Right.
But, he's reminding him of his responsibility and the fact that you led us here.
Right.
And now it's you're still supposed to be leading us.
Right.
By
And
the
you know
way,
what's
I
interesting about
realize
that?
now, Shawn, I'm so sorry. I realized I stepped on your passage. I forgot what color when I highlighted stuff. I took the weapons. I'm so sorry. I took that passage and read it.
Oh, it's totally fine. No, I didn't even remember.
Folks, just so you know, one of the things we do is before we sit down to do an episode, we kind of look through the chapter and say, oh, which words do you want to say? I mean, it's not a big deal. We just kind of mark up passages and say, I'm going to read this one, you'll read that one kind of thing. And I completely forgot that you're blue and I'm green in my book.
I'll get it. I'll get it back from you someday.
I'm
Don't
sure
worry.
you will. I'm
I'm
sure you will.
not worried about it.
I'm pretty sure the episode on Arendelle will probably be Shawn's solo episode.
Just do the whole thing in blue.
I'll just sit here and go, that's nice.
Tell me more about Arendelle, Shawn.
Yes, dear, whatever you say. I'll just read the paper.
Yeah. No
Anyway,
worries.
back to the text. I'll go with the next one because this is just, man, boy, Fëanor. Just so as Fingolfin's speaking, Fëanor comes in. Fëanor strode into the chamber, and he was fully armed. his high helm upon his head, and at his side a mighty sword. "So it is, even as I guessed," he said. "My half-brother would be before me with my father, in this as in all other matters." Then turning upon Fingolfin, he drew his sword, crying, "Get thee gone, and take thy due place." Fingolfin bowed before Finwë, and without word or glance to Fëanor, he went from the chamber, but Fëanor followed him. Boy, that's key, right? He could have just let him go. This is what I'm thinking.
I know.
He could have just let him go. But
Just let him go.
Fëanor followed him, and at the door of the king's house he stayed him, and the point of his bright sword he set against Fingolfin's breast. "See, half-brother," he said, "this is sharper than thy tongue. Try but once more to usurp my place and the love of my father, and maybe it will rid the Noldor of one who seeks to be the master of thralls." Well, there's that word again. These
Drew
words,
his sword and
Yeah.
placed it against
Yeah.
his breast.
that is, I mean, you pull a gun and put it to somebody's head. That's the same thing. He
Yeah.
has flat out threatened this guy's life, and then explicitly says, do this again. This being what? Talk to my dad before you got here?
Right.
That's really all he did.
You're not a... Oh, and I love my father.
Yeah, not our
Not
father.
our father. My father. Wow.
Yeah, Fëanor doesn't get it. And,
No.
and once again, he says, one who seeks to be the master of thralls. We'll see more of that. But
You meant the thrall thing comes up again, and it reminds me of the Fingolfin passage that I just read. When remember that Fingolfin talks about how Finwë led the Noldor. No, I'm sorry. It's the line immediately before that, bidding them accept the summons of the Valar to Aman.
yeah,
That's a subtle reminder of what we know actually happened, which is that the Eldar went to Aman willingly.
yeah,
There's
absolutely.
no thraldom here. They are there willingly. They are guests of the Valar. They're, it's a very interesting perspective, a difference of perspective between Fingolfin's
Huge.
clearly, I think, accurate perspective and Fëanor's clearly twisted perspective.
Very twisted. Yeah, it's interesting. The Master of Thralls thing keeps popping up, and we'll see, or just thralls, I should say, thralls and thraldom. We've already gotten a Monty Python reference, so let's just revisit a Princess Bride reference. But you keep on
please.
using that word. I do not think you know what that word means.
Right, yeah.
Because it really, I mean, in what way are you all slaves here of the Valar?
Right, yeah, exactly.
I don't see that.
No.
But so now we get the fact that, he does this and puts it on Facebook, right? I mean, he's in the great square beneath the Mindon, so everybody finds out. It was on, it was on Entertainment Tonight. I don't.
Was that when Galadriel unfriended him when he put it on Facebook? He's gone too far.
Oh man, it's brilliant stuff. I love it. So he's not thinking about public relations here at this point. But Fingolfin, again, restraint. I love this answer. That is to say, this non-answer. He made no answer, and passing through the throng in silence, he went to seek Finarfin, his brother. Let's just get on the same page, and then we'll address a solution. But he just ignores.
He's trying very hard not to engage Fëanor in this.
Ooh, which is probably the right thing to do.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Do you engage a crazy man with a sword?
Right?
No. Just
No, thank you.
Don't do it. But I think it also shows humility, don't you? I mean, this is...
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm not saying total humility, because we know he was proud. We know that he and Fëanor both, as the High Princes, were listed as being proud. But it does show that his pride is maybe not as deep-rooted.
I agree, and I think it is partly... what's the word? It's a deference to Fëanor.
Yes.
He doesn't agree with Fëanor, but I think this is where Fingolfin decides that, he is my older brother, half brother,
and he's the first in line.
He is the first in line. So I'm going to do as he says. I'm going to stick with him, and we see this again later in this chapter, and we see this again next chapter or the chapter after that.
Yes, we will.
When Fingolfin's. Not to spoil it, but Fingolfin is going to start sticking with Fëanor a little bit more to his own detriment.
Yeah.
And I think this is the moment when it happens. Again, it's him trying to do the right thing, backing the wrong horse, I suppose,
yes,
from this point
that's
on.
Probably true.
But,
Well, so he defers to the first in line, but the Valar don't have to defer.
No.
They realize, that this has happened, and he's the first one who's spoken against them. Interestingly, we see that, they didn't know. The unrest of the Noldor wasn't hidden, but its seed had been sown in the dark. That, just as a reminder, is that the Valar are not omniscient. They do not see everything. They do not know everything. They are little g gods. Just another reminder. We get a lot of those, but it's worth mentioning. So they actually call Fëanor and say, look, you're going to have to answer for this. So they bring him in. So he's summoned to appear and to answer for what he's done and what he's said. They bring any others who had any part of this matter. So that would also obviously include Fingolfin and probably Finwë as well. And Fëanor explains kind of how this has all come about. So we get this. Then at last the root was laid bare, and the malice of Melkor revealed. And straightway, Tolkis left the council to lay hands upon him and bring him again to judgment. Tolkis cracking his knuckles and getting on, racing out.
He's been
there.
waiting for this moment. He's like, I knew it.
He's been clenching his fist. Oh, cool. I get to go use my fists now. And so, certainly Melkor, Tolkis smash. So, but Fëanor's not held guiltless. Melkor may be the root of all this, and there's no doubt that he is. But Fëanor had broken the peace of Valinor and drawn his sword upon his kinsman. And Mandos has something very clear to say about this. I really like this.
Yeah, please.
Because it comes back to that thraldom issue. Mandos said to him, Thou speakest of thraldom. If thraldom it be, thou canst not escape it. For Manwë is king of Arda, and not of Aman only. And this deed was unlawful, whether in Aman or not in Aman. Therefore this doom is now made. And just as an aside, this is doom as in judgment, right? We talked about the different meanings of the word doom.
Yep.
This is the judgment meaning. So therefore this judgment is now made. For 12 years thou shalt leave Tirion where this threat was uttered. In that time take counsel with thyself, and remember who and what thou art. But after that time this matter shall be set in peace and held redressed, if others will release thee. My goodness.
So he's not held blameless, but there is a very strong, and I mean, there's I guess a couple things. He's not held blameless, but the punishment really isn't all that bad.
Pathetic.
12
years for an eternal, an elf that's immortal.
Yeah, I mean, it's a slap on the wrist.
And it's not 12 years in Mandos either. This is 12 years
no, that's true.
with
12
your
years
hoard in Tirion.
Yeah,
where you can go
that's
take a bath with all your gems and coins. And,
right.
Which
is pretty
and
much
hang
what he's
out
going
with
to
your
do.
7 sons, which is exactly what he's going to do.
Exactly what he's going to do. It's a slap on the wrist. I mean, it's a timeout is what it is.
You're right.
It's I mean, it's almost exactly what I tell my children. Think about what you've done.
Yeah.
Take counsel with thyself.
Yeah. I'm going to try telling my 4-year-old that.
Take
Son, counsel with thyself and remember who and what thou art.
Yeah, good luck.
And then I'll take a picture of his confused look. I'll send it to you. I'll post it to the website.
Please. But yeah, this is a minimal punishment.
Oh yeah, it really is.
It's
it is a slap
really,
on the wrist.
it really is truly just. It's just a hey, stop what you're doing and think about what you're doing. It's a think about what you're doing. It's not it's not punitive so much. It is just stop and think about what you're doing.
Yeah, this really is. You're right. Punitive is. It's a good way of putting it. This is not punitive. This is rehabilitative. This is fix the problem. Fix your attitude. And I love this because really what it is a call to humility. Remember who and what thou art. Remember.
Yeah.
Just remember who you are. You are a created child of Iluvatar. You are not a Vala. You are not the high king of the Noldor. You are not the most high king, of the elves, of the Eldar in total. You are the great craftsman, but that's who you are.
Yeah.
You're not any greater than who you are. You need to be humble. And we constantly see that call, that requirement, that challenge for people and for, I shouldn't say people, but for elves and men to be humble.
Yeah.
And I love this, though. It's interesting. Mandos is speaking of this in the future sense, that 12 years from now, this will all be fine if others will release you. Fingolfin doesn't have to release him for 12 years. Fingolfin can sit on this and wait until Fëanor comes back after 12 years and says, I've taken counsel with myself and I'm sorry. Will you release me? Yes, I will release you. Mandos.
Right.
Okay, it's everything's said in peace and it's held addressed. No, Fingolfin says it now.
Right now. He's saying
Right
now,
in front
I
of
will
the
release
Valar.
him. Right.
Fëanor
Fingolfin is
doesn't
already
care.
trying to do the right thing. He's already showing forgiveness. He's already showing humility. He's already letting go of this whole thing.
He's forgiven
This is
him.
the guy who had a sword pointed at him.
Yeah. The
For
first
talking
person
to his
ever
father.
to have a sword.
It's true. It's true.
What is this sharp thing you have in your hands? I do not even know this thing.
Right.
Oh, man.
You're
right.
Fëanor can't even see this as what it is, as the very slight punishment, the very lucky reaction that
He doesn't
gotten.
even like nod in respect to
No.
Fingolfin, like, that's cool, man. He just speaks nothing and turns and leaves the council. You can just see the steam coming off his high-plumed head, as he's walking out of the circle, out of the Mahanaxar.
Ooh, very good.
I had to...
Waiting for a chance to say that again.
I
The word
just had to come up with
really
that. Because here they just refer to it as the Ring of Doom. But yes, that's
The
Mahanaxar.
Mahanaxar.
But, he just turns and walks away, ticked, like you said, not thinking about, man, I really should have done something different there. Man, that was a mistake. I'll go, I'll go write sentences for 12 years or something, and, do penance or something. But it really
right
is
away,
interesting.
you know that he's not going to learn anything from this whole experience.
No, he won't learn anything except to shut himself even tighter into his treasury.
Yeah, and go into
Which
his
you're
banishment.
about to share with us right now, right?
Do I get to read this one?
It's blue in my text, yes.
Right. So he goes, and with him into banishment went his 7 sons. And northward in Valinor they made a strong place and treasury in the hills. And there at Formenos a multitude of gems were laid in hoard. There's that word hoard again.
Yep.
And weapons also. And the Silmarils were shut in a chamber of iron. Thither also came Finwë the king, because of the love that he bore to Fëanor. And Fingolfin ruled the Noldor and Tirion. Thus the lies of Melkor were made true in seeming, though Fëanor by his own deeds had brought this thing to pass. And the bitterness that Melkor had sown endured, and lived still long afterwards between the sons of Fingolfin and Fëanor.
Well, then let's remember that. Okay, Tanya, I wanted you to catch that. There was some bitterness between the sons of Fingolfin and Fëanor. I just wanted to mention that. Parliament's bag mail. No, sorry, Tanya, I'm not calling you out. I just because obviously not all the sons. There's some
Right?
there.
Yeah.
It's so sad that Finwë goes with him. I just find that to be
really
such a sad moment. I mean, after that heart-stirring talk that Fingolfin gives him and says, "Look, you brought us here. You're the leader. Lead."
Yeah.
He could have taken this chance to say, you know what, my son's going to need some help, and I'm going to go visit him from time to time and talk to him and try to give him some wisdom and tell him that if your mother were still here, she would say such and such. Darn it, she's not around anymore.
Yeah.
But he doesn't. He decides he loves his son so much, and not the right kind of love. I mean, the right kind of love here would smack him upside the head.
Right. He needs tough love right now.
Right.
He doesn't need this
Helicopter
coddling.
parent,
Yeah. Right.
So he goes back as the helicopter parent to.
You gotta
crazy.
wonder what Indus thinks of this.
Well, I don't think Indus goes with him in.
I'm sure.
Well, no,
she
we know
does.
she doesn't. We know she
Right.
doesn't because later on what happens, but that would be a spoiler, so we won't go there. But yeah, I'm sure she was a little disappointed. I waited for you all this time. You were already married. I thought I'd never get married because I'm certainly not going to get you to leave your wife because that doesn't.
Right.
Then she dies, and I think, well, it's still not going to happen. And oh wow, Allah says you can marry me now, and woo, I'm so happy.
Yeah.
And now, boom, you're off with your first son. I can't stand that kid.
Wow. I mean, this is just not.
No.
This is not Finwë at his finest.
No, it really isn't. It's Finwë acting almost under the not control of, but under the influence of Fëanor. He does love Fëanor. We know that, but he loves him poorly. Let's face it. Any father who loves his son like this Okay, let's bring in a current events thing. We're recording this shortly after a freshman swimmer at the University of Stanford was sentenced to something like 6 months for the rape of an unconscious woman. And the country is rightly up in arms, asking for the judge to be impeached, telling him he should step down. But what does the father of the rapist say? That the 6-month sentence is too long for 20 minutes of, stupidity or something, words to that effect. Whatever. Are you kidding me?
I know.
This kid needs you to man up and be a dad and tell him that what he did was absolutely wrong. Show him the error of his ways.
Yeah, exactly.
And
you're doing this kid no favors.
None at all. You are not helping him.
You're not helping the world, actually.
No, you're really not. And that is, so I guess now people will know that we're recording these way far in advance sometimes. Just so you folks know, that's because we know that we have real lives, and sometimes we might have to go a couple of weeks without recording an episode, and we don't want you to go more than 2 weeks without listening to one. So we're always trying to build a little bit of, a little bit of a buffer into there.
A little bit of a cushion. A little bit of the man behind the curtain there, but that's okay because I think it's a very apt comparison.
Yeah, it just came to mind as I was reading that and realizing what a horrible father Finwë was being here.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because later on we find that Fëanor, there's a line about, and who has ever loved his father more? And we think of that as being a noble and good thing, but I'm not so sure anymore that that's the case because I don't think this is the kind of respectful kind of love that you should have between a father and a son. This is some sort of weird codependency.
It's a codependent love. You're right.
It's really unfortunate.
It is.
But
wow.
Yeah. And so the lies of Melkor made true in seeming. Sure enough, Fingolfin wasn't trying to usurp you, Fëanor, but now Fingolfin's ruling the Noldor.
Right.
That's
but again,
all on you, buddy.
I mean, that's all on Fëanor, and that's all on Finwë for
Yeah, it really is. Because Finwë didn't need to leave. Finwë could have stayed there and ruled.
Yeah, absolutely.
And 12 years is just not that long when you're an elf.
It's nothing. It is right.
Really?
Yeah.
So,
Man.
So, and I know we need to start wrapping this up. I didn't realize, but man, we are already an hour and a half in. But you know what? I think we can probably wrap this up in 20 minutes, don't you think?
I think so. We got about a page left.
Yeah. Well, what are we? We're about a half hour a page, right? Oh, man. It is so bad.
A little faster than that.
I know. Maybe 15 minutes a page. Well, I know you've got the next. Before you do the next one, though, there's one that I noticed that I forgot to highlight, but I wanted to point out. It seemed to the people of Valinor that the light of the trees was dimmed, and the shadows of all standing things grew longer and darker in that time. Mm-hmm. Just another reminder of the ticking clock, right? This is, sun's going down. And so now the shadows are longer, and everything's just a little dimmer.
Yeah.
So where does Melkor go?
This idea that Melkor becomes a cloud in the hills, to escape from his own punishment that he's due from Tolkien.
Yes.
And just sort of becoming this, I think, like a shadow of malice, specter of malice floating around
shadow
Valinor.
Of malice.
I think I'm thinking of, isn't it?
Sauron ends up being...
Spirit of malice is what Sauron becomes, right?
Yeah.
But it's unfortunately, this is not permanent for Melkor. This is just him getting away, escaping judgment for a short time.
Yeah, Tolkien is chasing him with Anganor, and he's ready to...
He's got the chain. He's whipping it around.
Like a lasso.
Yeah. And I think the next passage is yours, isn't it? Because it's Melkor coming to Fëanor, isn't it?
You're right.
Or is there one I'm missing?
I'm sorry. No, it is mine. Yeah, right. So Melkor, goes to Formenos and speaks with Fëanor, and I love this. You'll have to forgive me. I love doing evil characters. So I should do him in like an Elmer Fudd voice, right?
It's a chance. It's a chance for Alan to be very different from the way he is in real life. I can attest to the fact that he is a very, very nice person.
Just a nice guy.
Just a nice guy.
You wouldn't believe him. He's just such a nice guy. I'm telling you, every time I talk to him, he's such a nice guy.
You should do Melkor in that voice.
The kind of the Wisconsin thing going on.
Yeah, please don't.
Behold the truth of all that I have spoken. Okay, I would edit that out if we edited anything.
Yeah.
Friendship he feigned with cunning argument. One might almost even say subtle argument. urging him to his former thought of flight from the trammels of the Valar. And he said, "Behold the truth of all that I have spoken, and how thou art banished unjustly. But if the heart of Fëanor is yet free and bold, as were his words in Tirion, then I will aid him, and bring him far from this narrow land. For am I not Vala also? Yea, and more than those who sit in pride in Valimar. And I have ever been a friend to the Noldor, most skilled and most valiant of the people of Arda." Now, Fëanor's heart was still bitter at his humiliation before Mandos, and he looked at Melkor in silence, pondering if indeed he might yet trust him so far as to aid him in his flight. I love that. He knows he can't trust him, but he might be able to trust him far enough to get him out, right?
Yeah.
And Melkor, seeing that Fëanor wavered, and knowing that the Silmarils held his heart in thrall, said at the last, "Here is a strong place, and well guarded. But think not that the Silmarils will lie safe in any treasury within the realm of the Valar." Well,
Oh, he said the S word.
he said the S word, yeah, twice. No, he said it once.
Yeah.
It was mentioned in the narrative once. The narrative says, knowing that the Silmarils held his heart in thrall.
There's
Bingo.
that word again.
We've talked about thraldom. Fëanor over and over says we're thralls of the Valar. No. Fëanor, you think everybody else is a thrall? You're the only thrall here. You are a thrall to your own creation.
Yeah.
And Melkor knows it. And that is huge. I mean, the whole time he's talking about thraldom like we're here unwillingly, we're total slaves. You know, like what, you're making mud bricks for the Valar and they're building pyramids? I don't see this, but, you know,
Right.
Maybe it's just not mentioned. But, you know, no.
Some of the stuff. No, yeah.
You know, here's the thing. It's like, you're the only thrall around. But you think everybody else is the thrall. It's that total blindness of pride.
Yeah.
But like you said, you know, Melkor said the S word, and that's all it takes.
That's all it takes.
You love this line, right?
Yeah, but his cunning overreached his aim.
Isn't
His
that
words
awesome?
touched too deep.
What a way with words the professor has.
Yeah. Yep. And awoke a fire more fierce than he designed. I don't have to read this whole paragraph, but I do love that, then hate overcame Fëanor's fear, and he cursed him and bade him be gone, saying, "Get thee gone from my gate, thou jail crow of Mandos." And he shut the doors of his house in the face of the mightiest of all the dwellers in Ea. I mean, that is pride.
Wow. I mean, hubris. Total hubris.
Yeah. Well, so you mentioned hubris. You know what word I'm thinking of.
I do know what word you're thinking of. Say it, my fellow word nerd.
I don't know if I'm going to say it right. Ophir mode.
Yes, Ophir mode.
We don't want to spend too much time on this.
No,
I know we're getting kind of long.
Yeah.
Yeah, but for those who haven't read it, there is a short work by Tolkien. It's a non-Middle Earth related work.
So a lot of folks will not have read it, but that's to their loss because it's a great piece.
It's in a few of the compilations. It's called The Homecoming of Beorhtnoth, Beorhthelm's Son, and I hope I'm saying those Anglo-Saxon words correctly.
Probably close enough.
Close enough for podcast work.
Good enough for government work, as they say.
But anyway, it's based on an Old English poem called The Battle of Maldon.
Yeah.
And in it, Tolkien tells a story of an earl who was overmastered by his pride, basically.
Yeah.
And Tolkien actually includes a little essay on the Anglo-Saxon word ophir mode, which he translates as overmastering pride.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating essay. It's a really nice, very nice dramatic piece. Tolkien didn't really ever really dabble much in drama.
No, I think
not
this was
writing it.
I don't remember.
Might be the only one.
Might be the only one that I've seen. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's great not just to read it and it's an interesting piece on its own, but also his little essay about ophir mode is very it is, and it helps with a few things. I mean, I think Fëanor and Melkor, there's a little bit of ophir mode in both of them.
Yeah.
And when we get to Turin later, I know Alan, I've seen some stuff you've written on Turin and ophir mode. Really, really applicable there.
Yeah, it really is. Well, there's again, not getting into too much detail, there's some actual kind of analogical moments between the two stories that seem very,
right.
that
That's
bring
true.
it very much to mind. But yeah, this is over mode. I mean, this is get thee gone from my gate, thou jail crow of Mandos.
Yes.
You know
what?
wow.
There's so many things I love about that Jail Crow of Mandos piece.
Isn't it great?
First of all, there's this thing in there that you realize he doesn't hate Melkor because he's Melkor. He hates Melkor because he thinks he's working for Mandos right now.
Yeah.
Like, no, that's not quite what's going on. And also just a little word nerd thing that I want to throw out there. Jail Crow is interesting because the name Mandos, remember, that's the name of the place, right? The halls of Mandos is actually what Namo is known.
Right.
He's known by the name of the place where he lives. But this word Mandos does actually come from a Quenya root that means something along the lines of jail. So I looked this one up, and so there's the first element comes from a root Mbando. I think I'm saying that correctly, which means custody. You also see that in something like Angband, which means iron prison.
Right.
And then the second part, the os, comes from Osto, which means like fortress or castle. Thinking about like Osgiliath. Belagos, Osgiliath. So anyway, it means I think Christopher Tolkien explained it as castle of custody, which pretty much sounds like a jail.
That does sound like a jail to me. Yes.
So anyway, it's just kind of a cool etymological thing. I like Jail Crow of Mandos. It's kind of neat, but not much more to say on it there. But man, the pride is just
you can smell it. You know,
yeah.
I mean, it's
you really can.
It's really strong. But I do love that Melkor slips up here. He almost had what he wanted, and you can almost see his excitement was just too much. And I wonder, okay, so the line says that Fëanor looked upon Melkor with eyes that burned through his fair semblance and pierced the cloaks of his mind. Now, was this some sort of, mind-reading power, or was this just really, really good discernment? I mean, I kind of lean towards, I lean towards the latter, that it's the experience and wisdom, and I think Fëanor's
just being perceptive.
Exactly.
Being very perceptive, yeah.
It's his perceptiveness, partially because Fëanor himself lusts after his Silmarils. He loves them with a greedy love. He hoards them. He denies even the vision of them to others. So
you think he can maybe recognize it in Melkor?
Yes, I think so. I think that's more
interesting.
What it is.
That's a good point.
Fascinating. So Melkor takes off. He knows he's in danger because he knows Tulkas is chasing him. And he knows it's not quite, time's not right for me to do anything because, he doesn't do it when it's a fair fight, as we'll see in the next chapter. Finwë, of course, having just seen Melkor, is frankly and rightfully filled with great fear. So he sends messengers back to Manwë. The Valar are in their council. The messengers from Formenos comes. And at once, Orome and Tulkas sprang up. But apparently Tulkas had come back. Maybe because he'd been that cloud in the hills, and I can't fight a cloud. I don't know what to do with a cloud. I cannot hit a cloud. I cannot smash a cloud. What do I do? I can't. Ainur does nothing against the cloud.
I cannot wrestle cloud.
At once, Orome and Tulkas sprang up. But he had to get back to the party anyway. But even as they set out in pursuit, messengers came from Eldamar, telling that Melkor had fled through the Calakiria, and from the hill of Tuna, the elves had seen him pass in wrath as a thundercloud. And they said that thence he had turned northward for the Teleri.
You did it.
See, I fell back into my old mode.
Hard. It's
for the
hard.
Teleri. See, that's the thing. I was trying so badly to make that second syllable sound like the A instead of an
Right. It's hard. It
is hard. For the Teleri in Alqualande had seen his shadow going by their haven towards Ahriman. So Melkor leaves Valinor, and now the land is filled with light again. The trees shine again unshadowed. But boy, is this the most foreboding little text. But the Valar sought in vain for tidings of their enemy, and as a cloud far off that looms ever higher, borne upon a slow, cold wind, a doubt now marred the joy of all the dwellers in Aman, dreading they knew not what evil that yet might come. It comes in a page. Let's just tell you that right now. So,
and the title, and right there at the top of the next page, in big capital letters,
of the
darkening of Valinor.
So yeah, folks, bad stuff comes, and that's just how it goes. But
it's just chilling. I mean, it is truly just chilling.
It's amazing that you can make something so foreboding when you know full well what's coming in the next, just one page later, and yet here you still feel that sense of doom, impending doom, and I mean that in the bad sense, not the Mando's judgment sense.
Not the Mando sense. Yeah.
Oh man, good chapter, and that does wrap it up. For another episode of the Prancing Pony Podcast. We just thank you for joining us. Thank you for your patience as we worked our way through another chapter with a whole lot of stuff going on.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much. And please join us again when we get into that darkening of Valinor in Chapter 8.
That doesn't sound good, does it?
Not at all. Not at all.
Well, as always, if you need cheap paperbacks to mark up, use the links on our library page at theprancingponypodcast.com.
And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe on iTunes or Google Play Music. We love it if iTunes users would take a moment to write us a review. And again, thank you so much to those who have.
Really are grateful.
We're also on Stitcher and TuneIn.
TuneIn, a new one, right?
TuneIn, yeah. We've just been on that one for a few episodes now. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, where you can get current updates, listen to previous episodes, and interact directly with the two of us. And we're also on Twitter. We've got lots of great conversation happening on Twitter lately, so follow us at Prancing Pony Pod, reply to us, and retweet us to your friends. Thank you in advance.
Definitely. One last thing. Don't forget to send your questions, comments, or your top 5 reasons the Arkenstone must be a Silmaril to the Prancing Pony Podcast at gmail.com. That's the Prancing Pony Podcast at gmail.com. And we'll try to get to them and rip them apart in our next episode. Well,
give them due consideration.
Give them due consideration. I love that. Well, an hour 40 is still far too short a time to spend amongst such admirable listeners. But until next time.
Farewell, friends.